Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven development video. I'm recording this on June 4th, 2012, picking up about 3 weeks since the last time I recorded. And in these last 3 weeks, I've been doing my Let's Code test-driven JavaScript screencast Kickstarter. It's been a great 3 weeks. We have over $35,000 in funding, over 700 backers, and today that this airs, is the last day it's open. So if you'd like to back it, if you'd like to get in on this, today is your day. It closes at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks for listening. This is the last time I'm going to mention it. Let's get on with this show. Okay, so when we left off, now it's been over 3 weeks, but I think what we were doing is we were just double checking some of these methods. So, and we were going to get them under test. So let's go ahead and get right to that. So here we are. That one, of course, should work because I haven't changed it. I could have sworn I told that to run its tests. There we go. So that does work. And that should fail because I've deliberately broken that code. Yeah, there we go. So we will fix that. And now it should work. Yep. And then we'll do the next one. And that should fail and be easy to make pass. Okay, so that's that. And I believe that means that we're done here. I think that means we're entirely under test. Now, it has been about 3.5 weeks since I last recorded, but I believe if I change this to 10,003 and this to 7,000x and this to 6951, and I tell it to save, and then quit. There it is. Perfect. Well, okay. So, what should we do next? I have no idea. As usual, I don't know. I think I wanted to keep cleaning things up a bit. It feels a little anticlimactic, doesn't it? I mean, we spent all this time on it. We did all this stuff in here, and now it's just done. And it's so nothing. Which just goes to prove the saying that doing things simple is harder than doing things complicated. So yeah, should save configuration. I guess there's some stuff to do in terms of stubbing out the file system. We don't really want that to be just here. We want that to be more generic. Oh yeah, and I made a note between recording that now we really need to have a smoke test to make sure that this isn't flipped on in production. So we've created a way to to sabotage our application. We've put a Trojan horse in here, and it's called stub out file system for testing only. Now, if I turn this to true, the test will break. So if I default to stubbing out the file system, the test, oh, no, they do not break. They should have broken, but they didn't. Why not? I don't know. Probably because here we turn it back to false. Yeah. But let's say we forgot that. Would the test break? I think so. But that's not really the point. The point isn't that the test break. Yeah, so they did break just there. And saying that it expected an IO exception, because these tests here assume that we're actually talking to the real file system, and they won't work if we're not talking to the real file system. So it is fairly difficult in theory to kill our application by turning this to true. But actually, as you saw, I can turn that to true. The program will pass all of its tests, but then when I go in, and actually run the application, and do a save, then I don't think it will actually show up. No, it doesn't. And yet all of our tests are passing. So that's obviously bad. And that is a flaw of this approach, in that we've created a way for the code to be wrong and our tests to be, say everything's okay, give us a false negative, false sense of security. So that's where the smoke test comes in. Now, I don't like doing end-to-end smoke tests. A smoke test, of course, is when you have a test that runs the application pretty much like the real user and confirms that the application doesn't blow up, doesn't create any smoke when you run it. So it would start at the UI and then go all the way down and write a file and then confirm that the file had been written. So that's really valuable for this sort of thing where we've got some infrastructure in there that isn't going to be exercised by our normal tests. And they're relatively easy to conceive, somewhat easy to write with the right tools, but very hard to maintain. So as a result, I'd like to keep them to a real minimum. Now, you might see other people use a lot of them. And I think that's fairly common in the Rails world, for example, is a lot of smoke tests that actually do. You see people using stuff like Selenium to exercise a web browser and then actually write stuff to a database and come back. And the problem with that is it's really slow, and on a serious application over time, that speed leads to all kinds of problems because it means you can't build frequently, or you can't get the results of your build very quickly. It takes, half an hour, 2 hours to run your build, which means you don't actually know if your code's working when you check it in. Whereas with these tests, which are a little bit slow, but still run less than 5 seconds, we can know before we check in whether or not everything works. And that's really the key. We want to know if things are working, not have some automated build tell us that it's not working 3 hours later. And I don't have any evidence supporting this, but I bet you a study would show a correlation between number of bugs in a system and the amount of time it takes to build that system. Because your feedback as it gets larger and larger, you are less likely to find your own bugs and have somebody else or some other system find them for you. And then they don't get fixed. So I don't like smoke tests, but I don't mind a few just to make sure everything hooks up together properly. So we need to do that, but maybe not right this second. Now, we also have this other note. Yeah, so in application model, we've got this, which is really doing nothing but passing the information through. And we've got these things, which are basically the same thing. So the question is, that's actually two different things. So the question is, can we get rid of those? Well, one thing we could do is get rid of last saved path or null if never saved if we injected our user configuration in a test. Now, this isn't injecting a mock, it's injecting an actual user configuration, but then we can query it. And I think that'd be a great idea. So let's go ahead and try that. see how well it works. First, I'm going to go and put in a constructor that doesn't do that. And that shouldn't break a thing. And now I'm going to put in a constructor that does take a user configuration. And that should also work because nobody's using it yet. And then I'm going to move these down here. And initialize this. So even when I use dependency injection, I like to have a default constructor that creates the dependency. That prevents having to have long graph construction calls where you're having to specify anything. The dependency injection is just a convenience. This is really what I expect the default to be using, or the default use of the class to be. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm getting over a nasty cold. You can probably hear it in my voice. So I'm going to be a little loopy today. All right, so that's working. Now we should be able to modify the test so that we are now doing our own user configuration. And that could potentially, I don't know if this is a good idea or not. Let's find out. I mean, from a design perspective, I think it'll work, but it's a little bit tricky in that there is an implicit order of operations that has to happen here. And we had a couple of episodes back, we got bit by relying on order of operations in our initializers. So yeah, as a result of that, I think I want to move these down here. Make that ordering a lot more obvious. Now, it's not as bad here as in that last episode where we had a problem, because it was here where at least depending, the model is obviously depending on the previous line, and it would break if we put them out of order. The code wouldn't compile. I think on that other one, we actually had a side effect in a method, which is not great design. Okay, that's still working. Now we can look at configuration directly. So that still works, and that means that we can get rid of this. Now the question is this better? Is this code actually better? I think so. I think it's better because that last save path, or null if never saved, which is an ugly name, I'll admit. I think it's better because that method really has no purpose in application model right now. Now, I know I justified it at one point by saying that at some point in the future, we might want to have that behavior, but that's not satisfying the agile idea of you aren't going to need it. We don't need it today, so I like this a little bit better. We do have to know more about the internals. We know that application model depends on user configuration. I don't think that's so bad, but that's something that we might want to revisit. Now, the other thing I'd like to do is see about getting rid of this in sort of the same way. That is, exposing the user configuration as more of a first-class object rather than just a dependency of application model. That is all the time we have for today, though, or for this episode. So we will pick up with that, looking at that question next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will catch you next time.